Steve Harvey was interviewing a guest when she said something that made him stop everything and call for the cameras to keep rolling. What happened next became the most emotional moment in talk show history. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October 2016, and Steve Harvey was taping his daytime talk show in Chicago. The guest was supposed to be a simple 5-minute segment, a woman named Patricia Williams talking about her nonprofit organization that helps young mothers. Nothing unusual, nothing that would make headlines. But sometimes the most powerful moments happen when you least expect them. Patricia was a 52-year-old woman from Detroit who had started a foundation called Second Chances. She'd been helping teenage mothers for over a decade, providing them with resources, counseling, and most importantly, alternatives to giving up their babies for adoption. What the producers didn't know when they booked her was why she was so passionate about this cause. What they didn't know was that Patricia had been carrying a secret for 28 years, a secret so painful that she'd never spoken about it publicly. Steve was halfway through his standard interview questions when he noticed something different about Patricia. She was answering his questions, but there was something in her eyes, a pain that went deeper than anything he'd seen before. "Patricia," Steve said, leaning forward in his chair, "tell me about why you started Second Chances. What made this so important to you?" That's when Patricia's composure began to crack. Her voice started to shake, and she looked down at her hands. "Steve," she said quietly, "I started this organization because I know what it feels like to give up a child. I know what it's like to spend every day for 28 years wondering if your baby is okay, if he's happy, if he even knows you exist." The studio audience went completely silent. Steve felt his heart skip a beat. "You gave up a child for adoption?" Steve asked gently. Patricia nodded, tears starting to fall. "I was 16 years old. I had no money, no support, no way to take care of a baby. I thought I was doing the right thing, giving him to a family who could provide for him better than I could." "What was his name?" Steve asked. "Michael," Patricia whispered. "Michael James Williams. He was born on March 15, 1988. He had the most beautiful brown eyes and this little birthmark on his left shoulder that looked like a tiny star." Steve could see that Patricia was struggling to continue, but something in her voice told him this was important, that she needed to tell this story. "Patricia," Steve said softly, "have you ever tried to find him?" "Every single day," she said, her voice breaking. "I've hired private investigators. I've searched social media. I've contacted the adoption agency. So many times they know my voice. But the adoption was closed. They won't give me any information." "So you've never seen him? Not even a picture?" Patricia shook her head. "Nothing. For 28 years I've wondered what he looks like. If he's tall like his father was, if he has my laugh. I've wondered if he's angry with me for giving him up, or if he understands that I did it because I loved him." Steve felt something he rarely experienced on his show. He was getting emotional. He could see that Patricia was pouring her heart out, and he knew this wasn't just an interview anymore. This was a woman who had been carrying this pain for nearly 3 decades. "Patricia," Steve said, standing up from his chair, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. If you could say anything to Michael right now, what would you tell him?" Patricia looked directly into the camera, tears streaming down her face. "I would tell him that not a single day has passed that I haven't thought about him. I would tell him that giving him up was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I believed it was the most loving thing I could do. I would tell him that I'm sorry if he's ever felt abandoned or unloved, because he has been loved every single day of his life. And I would tell him that if he ever wants to meet me, I'll be here. I'll always be here." The audience was completely silent, except for the sound of people quietly crying. Steve walked over to Patricia and handed her a tissue. But instead of sitting back down, he did something he'd never done before in the middle of an interview. "Patricia," he said, "I need to stop this interview for a moment. Producers, keep the cameras rolling, but I need to make a phone call." The audience looked confused. Steve had never stopped an interview like this before. Steve pulled out his phone and walked to the side of the stage. He was talking to someone, gesturing with his hands, and the audience could see he was having an intense conversation. After about 5 minutes, Steve walked back to Patricia, and there was something different about his expression. He looked excited, nervous, and emotional, all at the same time. "Patricia," Steve said, sitting back down, "I just called my producers, and I need to ask you something. Are you prepared for your life to change today?" Patricia looked confused. "What do you mean?" 3 weeks ago, a young man contacted our show. He said he was looking for his birth mother. He said he was adopted as a baby and that he'd been searching for her for years. He gave us his birth information, hoping we might be able to help him find her. Patricia's eyes widened. Steve, what are you saying? I'm saying that young man was born on March 15th, 1988. His birth name was Michael James Williams, and he has a birthmark on his left shoulder that looks like a tiny star. The audience gasped. Patricia put her hands over her mouth, unable to speak. Patricia, Steve said, his voice shaking with emotion, your son has been looking for you too, and he's here. What? Patricia stood up, looking around wildly. What did you say? Michael is backstage. He's been watching this entire interview. He wanted to make sure you wanted to see him before he came out. Patricia was sobbing now, unable to form words. So let me ask you, Patricia, do you want to meet your son? Yes, she whispered. Oh my God, yes. Steve walked to the side of the stage. Michael, come on out here, son. What happened next was something that nobody in that studio would ever forget. A tall, handsome young man with brown eyes walked out from backstage. He was 28 years old, wearing a simple blue button-down shirt and jeans, and he was crying before he even reached the middle of the stage. Patricia looked at him and immediately knew. She could see herself in his face. She could see the little baby she'd held for only 2 days before giving him up for adoption. Michael? She whispered. Hi, Mom, he said, his voice breaking on the word Mom. Patricia ran toward him, and they met in the middle of the stage in an embrace that seemed to last forever. The entire audience was on their feet, crying and applauding. Steve was wiping tears from his own eyes, something viewers had rarely seen him do. After what felt like an eternity, Patricia and Michael separated slightly, just enough to look at each other's faces. You're so tall, Patricia said, laughing through her tears, and you look just like your father. I have your eyes, Michael said. I've always wondered where I got these eyes from. They sat down together on the couch, Patricia holding Michael's hand like she was afraid he might disappear. Michael, Steve said gently, tell us how you found out about Patricia. Michael wiped his eyes and took a deep breath. I've been searching for my birth mother since I turned 18. My adoptive parents always told me that when I was ready, they would support me in finding her. They're amazing people, and they never made me feel like I was betraying them by wanting to know where I came from. What made you contact our show? I had tried everything else. Private investigators, adoption registries, social media. I was running out of options. But I remembered hearing that your show sometimes helps reunite families, so I wrote to your producers about 6 months ago. What did you tell them? I gave them all the information I had. My birth date, my birth name, the hospital where I was born, and the name of the adoption agency. I told them about the birthmark, Michael said, pulling up his shirt sleeve to show the small star-shaped mark on his shoulder. Patricia gasped and reached out to touch it. I used to kiss that little star every night when you were in the hospital, she said. I told you it was so you'd always know you were special. The investigators my adoptive parents hired told me that my birth mother was young when she had me, and that she gave me up because she wanted me to have opportunities she couldn't provide. They said the adoption agency described her as loving and heartbroken. Patricia was crying again. That's exactly right. Michael, I need you to know that giving you up had nothing to do with not wanting you. I wanted you so much, but I was 16. I had no money, no education, no way to take care of you properly. I know, Michael said. I've never been angry with you. I've been curious and sometimes sad that I didn't know you, but never angry. My adoptive parents made sure I understood that you made a loving decision. Steve leaned forward. Michael, what do you want to know about your mother? Michael looked at Patricia. Everything. I want to know what you were like as a kid, what your dreams were, what your favorite food is, what makes you laugh. I want to know if you have other children, if I have brothers or sisters. Patricia smiled through her tears. You don't have any biological siblings, but I want you to know that I never had other children because no child could ever replace you. I've spent my whole adult life helping other young mothers because I couldn't help myself when I needed it most. That's why you started Second Chances. Yes, every girl I help, every baby that gets to stay with their mother because of the support we provide, it's all for you. It's my way of honoring the choice I made and the love I had for you. Steve stood up. I have to tell you both something. In 15 years of doing television, I have never seen anything like this. The way this all came together. Patricia coming on the show to talk about her foundation. Michael having contacted us months ago. The timing of everything. It's like it was meant to happen. I believe it was, Patricia said. I've prayed every night for 28 years that somehow, some way, I would get to see my son again and tell him how much I love him. And I've prayed that I would find my birth mother, and that she would be someone I could be proud of, Michael added. And you are, Mom. What you've done with your life, how you've helped other people, I'm so proud of you. The audience erupted in applause again. Steve sat back down. So what happens now? Patricia and Michael looked at each other. I'd like to get to know you, Michael said. I'd like to meet my adoptive parents. They're here in Chicago with me, actually. They wanted to be here to support me. They're here? Patricia asked. Yes, they're in the audience, Michael said, pointing to a couple in the front row who were both crying and smiling. Steve motioned for them to come up on stage. Come on up here. This is a family reunion. Michael's adoptive parents, Janet and Robert Martinez, joined them on stage. They embraced Patricia immediately. Thank you, Janet said to Patricia. Thank you for giving us the most wonderful son we could have asked for. And thank you, Robert added, for making the brave decision to let him be raised in a stable home. We've always told him that his birth mother must have loved him very much to make such a selfless choice. Patricia was overwhelmed. You've done such a beautiful job raising him. He's exactly the kind of man I dreamed he would become. Steve wiped his eyes again. I think we're all witnessing something miraculous here today. As the show wrapped up, Patricia and Michael exchanged phone numbers, made plans to have dinner that evening, and promised to stay in constant contact. Michael, Patricia said as they prepared to leave the stage, I want you to know that even though I gave you up, I never gave up hope that someday we'd find each other. We did find each other, Mom, Michael said, and now we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. 6 months later, Michael walked Patricia down the aisle at her wedding. She had finally found the love of her life, a man who understood her past and supported her foundation work. And 2 years after that, Michael and his wife named their first daughter Patricia Rose Martinez, honoring both his birth mother and his adoptive mother, who had all played a part in making him the man he became. The episode where Patricia and Michael reunited became one of the most watched episodes in Steve Harvey Show history. But more importantly, it showed the world that sometimes love finds a way, even after 28 years. If this incredible story of a mother's love and the power of never giving up hope moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that miracles can happen when we least expect them. Have you ever experienced a reunion that changed your life? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing true stories about the moments that remind us what family really means.